This is the first time the boy has ever used a guitar, but he was able to play all the sounds in his head on the guitar. Jiho may have been born with a gift. He has the same absolute sense of sound as Tyler. Jiho lived on a poor and remote island with his grandmother, but one day, she left him to go shopping. When Jiho chased her out, she was in a car accident and was lying on the ground, not breathing. The police quickly identified the suspect who drove by that night, but the man insisted that he was wrongly accused. It was dark and windy, plus it was thundering and raining. Jiho could not see the car, but to everyone's surprise, he remembered the sound of the car's horn, so the police used the suspect's car to sound the horn. Jiho said the horn was louder than this. The police didn't understand that the sound of a car's horn is always the same. At that moment, Jiho also remembered something. He had heard that particular horn sound before. It's the same SUV that got him into trouble yesterday. The police soon started investigating. Jiho went home and watched his grandmother's cooking. While he was drowning in sadness, a couple of men in black broke in and took him away. Jiho thought they killed his grandmother, but he didn't realize that the men who came for him claimed to be his real father. The man is the president of the country's largest musical instrument group. President Yu left his son behind for 10 years and finally decided to bring Jiho back to him. And the appearance of his rich father is about to change Jiho's miserable life. President Yu brought Jiho home with him. Not only does he have a personal designer to customize his clothes, and dozens of maids to bathe him. This is something Jiho has never enjoyed in his life. But the sudden appearance of his son, his wife and youngest son are at a loss for words. The youngest son, In-woo, is a young man who lives in a greenhouse. He started learning piano at the age of 3 and is determined to succeed his father's musical instrument business. In-woo grew up with a maid and never had to suffer. Because he grew up in such a privileged environment, he became arrogant, unreasonable, and even arrogant. But with Jiho's appearance, In-woo felt his position in the family threatened for the first time. That night, he had a confrontation with Jiho. Jiho was not a child who was willing to be bullied. It didn't take him long to subdue In-woo. In-woo's screams soon attracted his father and mother. Instead of criticizing Jiho, Mom apologized for In-woo's outburst. In terms of age, Jiho is the older brother, so it's only right that he teaches his younger brother a lesson. Mom is a very kind person. She didn't want to transfer the adult's mistakes to the child. She decided to treat Jiho as her own when her husband brought her an illegitimate child. And soon everyone realized Jiho's innate musical talent. While practicing at In-woo, he could hear the wrong notes. He could sing all the keys that Mom pressed at the same time. So Dad called the family to discuss the matter. Most people leave the company to the child who has an absolute sense of sound. Dad also decided to let Jiho start learning the piano. The two of them would compete fairly and whoever was more talented would inherit the company. And Jiho's talent amazed his teacher. Within 2 days of learning, he was able to play difficult pieces perfectly. Jiho wanted to join the school's instrumental music department, so In-woo gave him a hard time. He had to play the melody we were playing on the piano. The girl played a random piece on the violin. Jiho just listened to it once and played it perfectly on the piano. Then another student played a more complicated melody on the flute. Jiho still played it on the piano after hearing it once. The students were amazed. It was genius. Because of Jiho's ability, his father decided to enter him into a piano competition in a month's time. In-woo didn't want to sleep in the same room with Jiho. He couldn't breathe. Why should he participate in the competition with him? He says he'll quit if Jiho enters. Jiho asked In-woo why he was against him. "Are you afraid to fight me?" They had a heated argument right away. In-woo didn't like Jiho's arrogance and pushed him against the fish tank. But the glass of the tank was cracked. Sora saved her husband's illegitimate son, but her own precious son was injured as a result. For a piano player, his hands are the most precious thing he has, and the piano competition is in a month's time. In-woo couldn't accept this fact, but even if he could only play with one hand, his skill amazed his brother Jiho. To cheer In-woo up for the competition, they made a bet. The loser of the contest had to fulfill the winner's wish. So from that day on, they practiced like crazy in order to win the competition and fulfill their wishes. It wasn't long before In-woo realized that his injured hand seemed to have fully recovered. After confirming that his hand was fine, he had second thoughts. In-woo asked the doctor to keep his hand in a cast. This may be a good opportunity for him to win the competition. That day after school, Jiho saw In-woo talking to a woman. When he asked who the woman was, In-woo said she was looking for your mother. Jiho was so confused that he dropped his bag and chased after her. He completely forgot that the piano competition was in 2 hours. He went straight to the subway and chased her from the subway to the bus stop. Jiho finally stopped the woman, but it wasn't his mom. It was an aunt who came to the school for a job interview. Jiho realized that he was tricked by In-woo. On the other hand, In-woo was already dressed up on the stage for a piano competition, with a plaster cast on his hand. His skills were no match for the other contestants. Just when he was confident that Jiho wouldn't make it to the competition, The door opened. Jiho began to play his own piece in front of the crowd. He was thinking of his mom and grandma. Jiho put all his feelings into this song, and his emotional performance touched everyone in the audience. Everyone stood up and cheered for him. Even his stepmother was touched. But the final result of the competition was unexpected. Jiho's performance was emotional but lacked technique. But Inwoo's performance with a plaster cast was so good. The judges thought that this was the true pursuit of music. Inwoo won the grand prize. Jiho only got a special participation award. Inwoo grabbed Jiho's bouquet and threw it on the ground and stomped on it. He was full of arrogance and was looking forward to the day when the country bumpkin in front of him would leave his house. Jiho walks back to his house in sadness and despair. But her stepmother brought her a gift and praised Jiho for being so great. She was even proud to have such a son. The warmth of her stepmother touched Jiho's heart. Inwoo wanted his father to reward him for winning the grand prize. But what he didn't expect was his father asking to remove the cast from his hand. The next moment, his dad threw Inwoo into the pool. Everyone was shocked and wondered why his father did this. But soon Inwoo climbed up with his injured arm. This action is the perfect proof that Inwoo's injury is already healed. Dad questioned why he lied to everyone to gain sympathy. Is it because he's afraid of losing to Jiho? It turns out that he saw Inwoo practicing the bar in the yard the day before. He picked up the trophy on the ground as the price for lying to everyone. He threw the trophy to the ground. He thought Inwoo didn't deserve to have a musical dream. From this moment on, my son is only Jiho. Inwoo asked his father, "Didn't you teach me to do whatever it takes to get what I want?" But Dad told him that it's because you're so much like me that he feels sorry for you. After the drama ended, his stepmother brought Jiho's trophy. Looking at the name on the trophy, her face was no longer smiling like an angel. Soon Jiho noticed the trophy in her stepmother's hand. Just when his stepmother thought she was about to reveal her true face, the innocent Jiho thought it was his brother's doing. Afraid that his stepmother would cut her hand, he took the trophy and threw it in the trash. He also told his stepmother not to worry about his relationship with his brother. While the stepmother was trying to leave, Jiho called out to her. Jiho said he wanted to call her mom from now on. Silly Jiho gave her everything, but he underestimated a mother's paranoid love for her own son. Before she got married, Sora was a glittering piano player. Every day, she went to a small room in the underground warehouse. It was a secret base that she kept from her family and housed her most precious piano. Because Sora's mother's family was not rich, her mother-in-law looked down on her. After her marriage, Sora waited on her demented mother-in-law and had a difficult relationship with her husband. Her greatest wish was for her son to become the future heir of the group. In order to convince her husband that she had accepted her illegitimate son, Sora even gave her a long-cherished out-of-print tape to show her selflessness and greatness. As Jiho's talent gradually showed, Dad not only customized an expensive piano for him, Grandma rewarded him with a $10 billion mansion. But the more he had, the more jealous his stepmother and Inwoo became. Inwoo started practicing like crazy, not only for himself, but also to fulfill his mother's dream of becoming a musician. That day, Dad arranged for a prestigious professor to test both children's abilities. He wanted to rewrite his will to determine the heir to the family as soon as possible. The professor gave the two of them a sheet of music and an hour to study it. Inwoo immediately showed his disdain when he read the contents. He asked the professor why he gave them an hour to study such a simple piece. He immediately got up and went to play it. The professor told him to be patient and to respect the piece. An hour later, when the professor asked the two of them what they thought about it, Inwoo replied that he thought the melody was too monotonous. His goal was to play a difficult piece that no one else could do. And when the professor looked at Jiho, Jiho was already in tears. Looking at the melody on the sheet music, he felt nothing but sadness. Sora was waiting anxiously at the door. Finally Inwoo came out alone. He told his mom what had just happened, and mocked Jiho's hypocritical crying and wondering what he was doing. Sora then remembered that the professor's daughter had recently passed away. She immediately guessed that the professor must have written this song for her daughter. This song was written by the professor on the day of his daughter's funeral. Compared to the two kids, Jiho's understanding of music is much better than Inwoo's, but Inwoo was too arrogant to rely on technique, which is a big no-no for a piano player. That night Jiho came to his stepmother's room with the recommendation. Sora didn't want to share her joy with Jiho at the moment. She just smiled and told Jiho to put the stuff aside and talk to him tomorrow. But as soon as Jiho left, she picked up the book and crumpled it into a ball and threw it in the trash. Then Sora started cleaning her desk, desperately trying to vent her devastation. That's when her mother-in-law called her out. She found a lot of Sora's unwanted clothes and diamond rings that she wanted to give away. This also included the abandoned piano in the underground warehouse. Sora was shocked that her mother-in-law had sleepwalked into that warehouse. She remembered everything she saw. She pleaded with her mother-in-law to keep the piano, but no matter what she said, it didn't work. Sora was devastated. But something even more desperate happened. Her husband told her that the professor's recommendation was for Inwoo. Hearing that it was her son's chance, Sora secretly went to the trash can outside in the middle of the night behind her husband's back. The next moment, her husband appeared in front of her with the letter of recommendation. Jiho gave the opportunity to his half-brother. He's no match for Inwoo in terms of English. Study abroad. and skills. Jiho wanted her brother to study with someone better, because he was the envy of others. But Inwoo didn't appreciate it. He didn't need charity. Jiho said, because you're my brother, I want to give you this opportunity. But Inwoo said, we can't be brothers for the rest of our lives. Jiho shed tears. She had been living with her grandmother since she was a child and she really wanted a brother. The next day, on her way home from school, Jiho saw a little girl in front of a piano store who was simulating playing the piano. Jiho couldn't help but smile. The girl, Hayami, was his new friend. A few days ago, they met in front of the piano store. He learned that Hayami loved the piano but had never touched it. Jiho lied to the owner and took Hayami into the piano store to teach her how to play. But as she played, Hayami burst into tears. Her father was deaf and mute. No matter how beautifully she played, her father couldn't hear her. In order to comfort Hayami, the two of them went to the park to ride bicycles together. But this time Jiho took Hayami directly to the school's auditorium. When no one was around, they sat down at the piano and started playing four-handedly, looking at each other with big smiles on their faces. But then the curtain opened and the audience filled up underneath. They began to applaud the children's performance. They were so scared that they ran away. That day, Hayami's family received an old piano. Her mom told her that the piano was thrown away by a rich man before he left the country. The owner of the piano is Jiho's stepmother. It turns out that Sora's mother-in-law suffers from Alzheimer's. Whenever she got sick, she'd run to Hayami's father's stall and steal cakes. But instead of scolding her, he gave her a lot of hot pancakes. Hayami's father's kindness touched her heart. In order to repay him, Granny also brought a lot of clothes and jewelry. Grandma lied that the rich family she worked for was going abroad and she didn't want any of it. Not only that, she introduced Hayami to a piano teacher. That's where Hayami met Inwoo. Inwoo was immediately mesmerized by her innocent smile. He started practicing with Hayami, but Jiho bumped into them as they sat together. Jiho bought a piano cassette to give to Hayami as a gift. But just as he was about to deliver the gift, Inwoo came out with a gift box. Jiho immediately put away his things and could only watch the two of them talking and laughing. He rushed back to his room, but he didn't know that Hayami also prepared a gift for him. So Hayami asked Inwoo to help her give him her most treasured item. Inwoo looked at the pendant and instead of handing it over to Jiho, instead, he angrily put it in his own box. But before he went to bed, Inwoo found the record Jiho left for him on the table. After the past few days, Inwoo's heart seems to have begun to let go of his animosity towards Jiho. As a gesture of goodwill, he gave Jiho a gift from his mom. Even though it's a gift, Inwoo looks arrogant and says, "Take it or leave it." Jiho opened it and saw that it was a pajama with bunny ears. He was so happy that he couldn't hide the smile on his face. Late at night, when it was lightning and thunder, Jiho, who was afraid of thunder, went straight under Inwoo's blanket. He wanted to sleep with his brother. When Inwoo didn't give him permission, he was ready to leave. He immediately scolded Jiho for being so timid as a brother. Jiho is immediately happy that Inwoo finally recognizes him as his brother. But on one side of the family, the other side of the family is in turmoil. Sora saw that her husband made a will to inherit all the property to Jiho. The two of them started to fight about the past. During the fight, President Yu's head hit the corner of the cabinet. At the same time, her mother-in-law was celebrating her birthday, but she got sleepy after lighting the candles. When she woke up again, the cake and candles that fell on the floor had already lit up the whole house. Grandma went crazy and rushed out of the room to find Hayami's father. In the next room, Sora saw her husband unconscious, but she didn't know what to do. She tries to run away, but realizes that the large living room is already ablaze, and the fire seems to have come at the right time. She went back to her room and tore up her husband's will. Then she took a pair of scissors from a drawer and cut the phone line on the desk. But just as she was about to leave, her husband called out her name as he held his breath. Sora didn't come to her aid and ran out. She pushed the cabinet against the door. In order for her son to inherit her husband's property, she had to do this. Then Sora rushed to the second floor to save the child. Finally, she saw Jiho on the floor, wearing a rabbit pajama. Sora didn't identify herself and grabbed the child and rushed out. But after bringing the child out, she realized she had saved the wrong person. Inside the house, Hayami's father was looking for his injured child. He saw Inwoo running downstairs, but the chandelier above Inwoo's head was swaying. He used his own body to protect his child. Finally, Inwoo and Hayami's father were pushed out, but Jiho was sad that he didn't see his father. He didn't know if his father was dead or alive. But the next moment, his father appeared behind him. Jiho's tears flowed out. He hugged his dad and cried. Fortunately, his favorite person was still alive, but it was all Jiho's illusion. Looking at his father lying on the stretcher without breathing, Jiho broke down. Hayami's father, who had acted bravely, and President Yu, who had been locked in the room, were killed in the accident. Sora quickly sent her mother-in-law to a psychiatric hospital for treatment of dementia. Inwoo was suffering from burns on his skin because he couldn't get help in time. He hates his mom for saving Jiho, who is not related to him. Sora was about to explain when the police arrived. Although the police found out that the cake and candles were the family's fault, but they also found President Yu's head wound showed signs of concussion. Sora became nervous. She made excuses that she didn't know and quickly found a way to escape. The assistant told her that a strange man died in the fire together. The man's wife came to see her. Sora didn't know what to make of it, but when she saw the diamond ring in the woman's hand, she understood. The clothes and the diamond ring that the mother-in-law had taken were all for this family. Sora immediately approached the mother-in-law and asked her about the man's identity. She then realized that it was the man her mother-in-law had gone to ask for help. So when the police questioned Sora again with the torn and fallen hairpin on the floor, Sora put all the blame on Hayami's father. Soon the police seized a lot of expensive clothes and bags from Hayami's house. For the Hayami family who lived in a rented house, these items seemed extravagant. Hayami's mom didn't know that the maid's grandma who gave her gifts was President Yu's plutocrat mom. She explained all this, but the police didn't believe her. They insisted that her husband was the thief who broke into the family's house to steal. In order to prove her husband's innocence, Hayami's mom came to see Sora in front of the syndicate. Sora was too weak to look the woman in the eye. Let her break down and beat the car window, shouting injustice. When Sora ignored her, she blocked the car with her own body. If you want to go, then press through me. But she is a pregnant woman, how can she fight against the plutocrats? At Sora's order, the security guards dragged Hayami's mom away and left her there. Hayami's mom seemed to be in labor and fainted from the pain in her stomach. In the end, she couldn't save her baby. The family was forced to move out of their current rented house. Looking at the wall, she saw people's slanders against her husband written all over it. Hayami's mom wiped her face with a towel. Is this what happens to good people? Jiho left with the heartache of his father's death and the guilt of his brother's injury. He went back to the island where he used to live alone. Sora doesn't plan to pick him up. She wants to take this opportunity to reconnect with Inwoo. Sora got the best medical team to operate on her son. Even if she spends everything she has, she won't let him give up his dream of playing the piano. Not only that, she also promised Inwoo that she would make him the heir of the company. Even if Jiho comes back, she won't see him. Inwoo reconciled with his mom and underwent surgery in order not to upset her son. Sora didn't tell him that his father had died. At the moment when he was taken to the operation room, Inwoo was still looking forward to a family trip with his mom and dad after recovery. Meanwhile, the lawyer came to Sora with a copy of President Yu's will. 80% of the shares were left to his eldest son, Jiho. The lawyer wanted to bring Jiho back from the island but was stopped by Sora. Sora asked the lawyer to help her become the chairman of the board of directors. Soon reporters gathered in the hall. When reporters asked her why she saved her illegitimate son first, Sora once again put on the face of an angelic mother. The lawyer suggested that now she must bring Jiho back. If the story of Jiho's eviction comes out, the image of motherly love will be destroyed and the company will suffer. Sora couldn't accept this proposal. If Jiho came back, what would Inwoo do? She had no choice but to go through with the board meeting. At the board meeting, Sora showed everyone a piano that her husband had customized for her. The piano was built by 30 pianists. Because there is no logbook, the piano is now out of print. In order to convince everyone to make herself president, Sora boasted that she would make an equally good piano in 5 years. But that wasn't convincing enough. She was asked if Jiho had been kicked out of her house. Everyone wanted to see Jiho in person. At that moment, Jiho was lying on the ground, dying from fear of thunder. He kept calling out for his mom. At that moment, Sora opened the door. She finally decided to bring Jiho back to her. Jiho, dressed in a suit, showed his mother and son's love for each other in front of everyone. He sat at the piano and played a song. Sora's heart is full of ambition for the group. Soon Inwoo's surgery was over, but the nerves in his thumb are completely dead and he can't move it anymore. Inwoo collapsed and couldn't move his thumb, so he couldn't play the piano. At that moment, Jiho came to visit him with flowers. When Inwoo saw him, he became even more desperate. Mom promised she'd never bring him back. But one thing led to another. Jiho told him about his father's death. Sora tried to explain, but Inwoo couldn't understand. You organized Dad's funeral without my knowledge and brought Jiho back without my knowledge. Did you do all this for my sake? Jiho chased Inwoo all the way to the balcony. Jiho grabbed his brother's hand in the nick of time. 14 years have passed since then. Sora's company was flourishing. She was very ambitious and was looking to expand in different fields, and Jiho's talent made him the best pianist and a gifted composer. The mother-son duo is the envy of all. But throughout the years, Sora never lost sight of her ultimate goal. It's Sora's birthday. Inwoo, who has been abroad for many years, has also returned. 14 years ago, because of his resentment towards his mother, and because he didn't want to be in the shadow of Jiho, Inwoo has been studying abroad alone all these years. He has not touched the piano and has become a songwriter behind the scenes. This time, he does not plan to stay for long after returning. Inwoo bought a plane ticket for the next day to leave the country and will not return after leaving. At that time, the betrayal of being abandoned by his mother has never been forgotten. Inwoo had also given up on himself. Finally, Sora told the truth that day. Mom didn't save you because she couldn't. She mistook Jiho, who was wearing a bunny pajama, For you, she kept it a secret for so long because she was afraid that Jiho would become suspicious if he knew. It turns out that Sora, as the president, doesn't have any shares in the company. The owner of the company is still Jiho. She is only the acting president. Sora's goal is to take back the entire group from Jiho and give it to her own son. Inwoo decided to stay by his mother's side and achieve this goal together. Sora introduced Inwoo to world-class musician Professor. Their first plan was to make Inwoo Prof. His successor. Becoming his successor would not only receive personal guidance, but also be recognized worldwide for his strength and authority. But in recent years, Jiho has been serving Prof. He is his favorite disciple. The two also secretly collaborated on a score together, planning to perform it at a concert soon. But that day, Jiho was so engrossed in reading the score while riding his bike that he accidentally bumped into a girl coming the other way, and they both fell to the ground together. Not avoiding minor injuries, Jiho lost his temper and left angrily, only to realize that he had ridden the wrong bike, and the score in the bike had turned into a recipe book. Jiho was very upset. That was a secret that could not be made public. What if Prof. He found out about the score? That evening, when Prof. He met Inwoo, he heard a familiar melody. The girl who had found the music was sitting at the restaurant's piano playing the piece. Prof. He immediately asked where she had gotten the music. He learned that she had picked it up on the street. Professor. He was furious and left angrily. The girl's performance was filmed by a customer and posted online. Due to Jiho's mistake, Prof. He directly replaced the protagonist of the concert with Inwoo. The professor did not listen to Jiho's explanation. Without emotion, he directly kicked Jiho out of the competition. Jiho was very sad, but he did not want to give up. This was his promise to the audience. He could not let down the audience who supported him. What made things even more difficult was that Jiho's finger was broken, and his wrist was seriously injured due to the fall last time. In order to be able to play normally in the future, he must now be put in a cast to heal. Looking at the photo of his student on the table, he resolutely tore off the bandage and went to the school to ask Professor He to let him go on stage as scheduled. Now that Jiho has withdrawn, everyone has returned their tickets, and this has caused a loss that even the professor can't help. That night, Jiho went directly to the restaurant and found the girl who was playing the piano part-time. He criticized the girl for not being qualified to play the piano. Do you know what kind of hell I fell into because you played my music? In a moment of anger, Jiho directly described the girl as a bicycle thief and exposed her identity in front of everyone. The girl claimed to be a music student from a prestigious foreign university, but in fact she was a genuine imposter. After Jiho left, the boss also angrily fired the girl. The girl stammered and didn't know how to respond. Just as the waiter dragged her away, Inwoo appeared. He had just been standing nearby and witnessed the whole thing. Inwoo bravely helped the girl out and scolded the shop owner who only knew how to read Chinese. He took the girl to the door and took out 2 concert tickets. It turned out that Inwoo had seen the girl's video online and learned her name from the comment section. The image of playing the piano together as children appeared in his mind. After many years, he finally met Hayami again. After returning home, Hayami handed her brother the concert tickets. She hoped that her brother could accompany her. When he saw the company name on it, his eyes suddenly became sharp. This was the company that framed his father back then. Over the years, he and his mother had never given up trying to clear his father's name. Hayami's mother had worked in a nursing home for 5 years, trying to get close to her grandmother, who had Alzheimer's, to awaken her memory and help testify for her husband. But after so long, there had been no progress. Sarah also recognized this woman as the pregnant woman who had stood in front of her car back then. She then secretly transferred her mother-in-law to another nursing home. Hayami's mother tried to find out where her grandmother had gone through various connections, but after entering the ward, she was shocked by what she saw. What Hayami's mother didn't know was that she had fallen into Sora's trap. It was all just a trap she had set to get rid of the woman pestering her. But one day, her brother received an envelope. Inside was the receipt for the piano that Sora had sent back in the past, and the number on the envelope was the same as the day Dad died. Her brother didn't know who had sent the letter. He planned to collect more evidence to avenge his father. So my brother went to the concert sponsored by the Mere Future group with Hayami, and saw the face that would forever remain etched in his memory. But Hayami, who was simple-minded, was just excited. After looking at the program, she realized that the genius pianist Jiho was the one she had hit with her bicycle. Soon the concert began. The first to perform was Inwoo, who composed a piece for his special 9 fingers. Inwoo combined sand art with orchestral music, and received a warm applause for his moving performance. But when Jiho performed, a group of musicians took the stage without permission, and a banner reading Black Powder was unfurled in the audience. Jiho was surprised, but quickly adjusted his mood and began to play. But at this time, his hand injury had not healed. After just a short while, he had to stop because of the pain. In a responsible manner, Jiho wanted to continue, but it seemed that he was completely unable to continue. Jiho chose to leave halfway through. The audience was also full of sighs. Hayami knew that this was all her fault, so she went to the school the next day and found Prof. He to explain what had happened, and also mentioned Jiho's hand injury. The professor stopped being angry, because Hayami had come forward. and the two reconciled. Prof. He said he would announce tomorrow that Jiho would be his successor, and gave him the right to evaluate his own work. After learning that Hayami had never studied the piano, the professor gave Jiho one last assignment, to teach Hayami to play the piano. But their reconciliation is not a good thing for Sora. She learns from the professor's daughter that Jiho has become the successor. Sora also begins to panic, but she will never sit back and do nothing. That day, Jiho accidentally bumped into a delivery man downstairs in the professor's office. He helped the other person pick up the documents on the ground. He was also attracted by the sound of the other person pressing the buttons on his phone. He was still wondering why anyone would still use that kind of phone. When Jiho arrived at the office, the professor was not in the room, but the documents in the safe were scattered all over the floor. He collected the things. This scene happened to be seen by a classmate. What Jiho didn't know was that the documents originally in the safe were the new music that Prof. He planned to publish. The next day, he heard from the reporter that his new music had been sent to the magazine, and the suspect was Jiho. At this time, Jiho was meeting with a foreign producer. He had composed a piece of music for the professor's retirement and wanted to collaborate with a foreign orchestra. But this also became one of the pieces of evidence that incriminated him of theft. Jiho, who learned about the matter, immediately went to the office to clarify everything. Just then, the secretary brought in a witness. The witness was the male classmate who witnessed the opening of the safe yesterday, and the person behind him who set this up was Jiho's beloved stepmother. At this time, Sora was still looking incredulous. She pretended to believe Jiho very much and even volunteered to check the surveillance video. But in fact, the surveillance videotape had already been switched. This seems to have confirmed Jiho's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. No matter how he defended himself, the professor didn't believe a word he said. Jiho was prepared to take responsibility, but that day, his grandmother gave him some hints. Soon after, Jiho received a notice from the school dismissing him, and he filed a lawsuit with the court. The lawyer said that the surveillance camera didn't capture anyone entering or leaving. If he wanted to clear his name, it would be very far-fetched. But just then Jiho thought of the delivery man he bumped into downstairs. Why didn't the surveillance camera catch him? He said that the surveillance footage he watched at the time was most likely forged, and the music score must have been leaked by that person. Sora's expression became panicked. What she didn't expect was that Jiho remembered the sound of the man's phone keypad. Jiho went to the phone store and found various models of phones. Using his perfect pitch, he listened to the keypad sounds. After locking in on the phone, the next step was to go to the surveillance room and find the tape from that day. Jiho listened intently to the key press sounds and perfectly matched the password. Sure enough, the security room no longer had the tape from that day. Jiho suddenly broke off all thoughts. He didn't know who had set this trap for him. He took the special phone and tried to recall the key press sounds of the delivery person at that time and entered the numbers according to the sounds he heard. Finally, he discovered a shocking secret. The name saved in his own phone for this number was actually his mother's personal secretary. A bold idea came to Jiho's mind. Could the person behind this be his own mother? Sora was planning a countermeasure on this side. The fact that the courier wanted to meet Sora was actually an attempt to extort a large sum of money. They agreed on a time and place to meet. Sora also wanted to resolve this matter as soon as possible. In order not to reveal her whereabouts, she deliberately asked Secretary Wu not to follow her. But when Jiho returned home and learned that his stepmother had left Secretary Wu alone to go out to a party, he became even more suspicious. As Jiho was about to leave, he heard his stepmother give Secretary Wu 200 million in cash. The secretary arrived at the parking lot, looked around to make sure no one was around, and then drove off. But not far away, Jiho was watching him. Jiho followed the secretary's car all the way to a remote courtyard restaurant. At this time, in the private room, Sora was handing the courier money in exchange for the goods. When Jiho arrived, he quickly noticed the courier motorcycle at the door. He took down the license plate number and immediately rushed into the private room to start looking. Finally, he saw his mother's high heels and the sports shoes hidden under the cabinet. Jiho suddenly remembered what his grandmother had told him. Could it be that the person his grandmother was hinting at was his stepmother? With a worried heart, he pulled open the door. But what he didn't expect was that there was not only his stepmother sitting in the room, but also At this time, Sora was begging he to cancel the lawsuit and give Jiho a chance. But he said, "Don't let me see Jiho again," and turned away. When Jiho rushed out, the motorcycle was gone. He asked the secretary who followed him what had just happened, and why he had spoken to the courier the day he lost something. The secretary said that the 200 million in cash was the liquidated damages paid on his behalf, and the call he received that day was a threatening call demanding money. Jiho instantly became self-blaming, but when he returned to the compartment, he found that the pair of men's shoes that he had hidden at the bottom were gone. So in front of his stepmother, Jiho pretended to give up the investigation, but in secret, He stared at the motorcycle's license plate number and began to think of ways to find out who was behind it. Jiho found the phone number of the courier company and asked for the owner's number for the motorcycle's license plate. He asked the courier to deliver a package for him. He crouched down and stared at the man getting off the motorcycle, but the man who got off the motorcycle was not the same person. Jiho was a little confused. What was going on? He followed the man all the way to the courier company. Finally, the man wearing the same yellow sneakers appeared, but the courier had already agreed on a statement with the stepmother. They even blamed everything on Prof. Not only that, but the man also described Sora as an angelic mother, who was extremely worried about her son. He also said that at the restaurant, Prof. Had called her over. The old man couldn't wait to destroy his student. Jiho believed everything and connected all the dots. He began to repent for having misunderstood his stepmother. An exasperated Jiho went directly to the professor and questioned him why he had used such despicable means to get rid of him. The professor was at a loss for words. How dare you behave so outrageously here? Jiho was disheartened and immediately said that he would leave the school. It was I who refused to become your successor. When he returned home, Jiho immediately knelt before his stepmother, hoping to be forgiven. Sora used Jiho's self-blame to make him obey her unconditionally. From now on, she would slowly take Jiho's shares. The next day, Sora went out to dinner with Inwoo. Hayami's mother was working as a waitress at this restaurant. When she saw the two of them, she immediately hid. She waited until they left before cleaning the table, but Sora had left her phone on the seat. Hayami's mother also had a wicked idea at this time. She hid in the corner and checked the phone. A text message was sent immediately. A woman claiming to have just returned to the country said she wanted to meet Sora. Hayami's mother immediately deleted the text message and broke the phone. Then she asked the manager for a leave of absence and rushed to the agreed meeting place in the text message without stopping. On the other side, Sora's lawyer had already arrived at the cafe. He dragged the woman to the corner outside the door and questioned her about why she had returned to the country. The woman used to be a maid in the President Yu household. Back then, she had witnessed Sora push President Yu to the ground, but it was also because she knocked over a cake with a lit candle that caused the terrible fire. The lawyer had a recording of Lisa reporting the incident to the police. He knew that Lisa had returned to blackmail the lady with this incident. The lawyer tried his best to stop her, because his ambitions went beyond this. Their conversation was heard by Hayami's mother, who was not far away, and then Sora got out of the car. She didn't notice anything unusual, and Lawyer Wu also gave Lisa a solution. You can go see Madam, but you have to ask her for a hotel building. So Lisa went to the appointment. The two exchanged casual greetings. Lisa then mentioned what she had seen in the fire that year, and asked Sora for the expensive hotel. Sora refused outright. Absolutely impossible. But Lisa said she had already notified Lawyer Wu that the vice president should know how the chairman died. Within 2 seconds, Lawyer Wu walked in with a look of innocence. Both of them hinted at the fire that year. There was no way Sora could refuse, so she let the lawyer help prepare the transfer documents. After returning home, the lawyer took out something from the safe. Inside was a tape and the white jacket that Sora had taken off during the fire and that had President Yu's bloodstains on it. Lawyer Wu had even picked it up from the trash. Hayami's mother, who had overheard the key content on the other side, also followed Lawyer Wu all the way to his home. She unexpectedly discovered a good opportunity to get close to Lawyer Wu. His family was hiring a cleaning lady, so Hayami's mother went to the domestic agency and slipped the boss a sum of money. She specifically requested to be assigned to Lawyer Wu's home as a cleaning lady. After successfully entering Lawyer Wu's home, Hayami's mother just started rummaging through the house. She must find the recording device, but she searched every corner of the house and couldn't find it. Finally, one day she noticed a tilted painting on the wall. With a worried heart, she took the painting down. Sure enough, behind the painting was the secret safe. And Jiho also set his sights on Lawyer Wu. He learned from his colleagues that the ambitious Lawyer Wu wanted to become the president of the foundation. He immediately voted against him as the future chairman of the group. Not only that, Jiho also set a trap for Lawyer Wu. He claimed that he was going to become a mentor to Prof. Zhang, Professor He's competitor. Soon, he created the image of a disciple betraying his mentor for fame. As expected, Lawyer Wu immediately contacted the newspaper and planned to expose the incident and bring Jiho's reputation down. For a while, the internet was full of negative news about Jiho, but a few days later, Jiho came with the police and arrested Lawyer Wu for defamation. At this time, Jiho still didn't suspect his stepmother, but his stepmother was already getting restless. If Lawyer Wu handed her over, she would be finished, so she bribed Prof. Zhang to frame Jiho. Soon Jiho held a press conference to clarify the rumors. Prof. Zhang immediately stood up and began to slander him. Jiho, who wanted to prove his innocence, was actually slandered by Prof. Zhang. He never expected this to happen. When Jiho left, Prof. Zhang just got into the elevator, but in the reflection in the mirror, he saw a familiar face. Although Jiho was very puzzled, he was afraid of misunderstanding his stepmother like last time. But in 2 days he received a package from Prof. Zhang. Inside was a voice recorder. How much are you willing to pay to get me to go abroad and avoid you? Jiho immediately convened an emergency board meeting as chairman of the board and stated that he had received decisive evidence of the slander. Lawyer Wu became nervous. He said that he could not discuss such things until the chairman was present, but the other shareholders all stood by Jiho's side and repeatedly asked Jiho to release the recording. Just then, Sora rushed in from the door, but Jiho still didn't hesitate to play the recording. Sora's new clothes hung down. Fortunately, it wasn't her voice. Jiho questioned Lawyer Wu as to why he had done this to her. "If you don't tell me, I'll strip you of your position." Lawyer Wu wasn't going to die alone either. He immediately said that there was someone behind him. He perfectly got rid of all suspicion of himself. But in fact, the voice behind that recording was him bribing Prof. Zhang. Jiho couldn't understand why his stepmother would do such a thing, but Sora came out from behind her and confessed to all the things she had done. She just wanted Inwo to become Prof. He's successor. "You have everything, so you can't let your brother have it?" At that moment, Jiho asked a fatal question. "Did you ever regret saving me from the fire that day?" Sora's answer was never, because at that time, I gave your father his last gift. From that day on, Jiho could no longer look Sora in the eye, and he no longer wanted to be a puppet to his stepmother. Jiho officially joined the group and planned to take over the company as the chairman, and with the disclosure of Yu Young's identity, Prof. He also made up with Jiho, and proposed that Jiho and In will participate in the air competition together 10 days later, and give them a fair chance to compete. Jiho, thinking about how hard it was for his younger brother, planned to give up the competition, but that day, his grandmother gave him a tracksuit, and Inwoo also had one. Jiho got changed and was ready to go out when he accidentally knocked over a houseplant. His stepmother thought it was Inwoo and immediately came over to check on him, but when she saw Jiho's face, she was a little confused. These words suddenly made Jiho realize something. 14 years ago, he also wore the bunny pajamas that his stepmother bought for Inwoo. It turned out that his stepmother had mistaken him for Inwoo and saved him. Jiho was greatly shocked. He found Prof. He expressed his willingness to participate in the competition for the position of successor. He must find out whether his stepmother's affection for him was genuine or not. So Prof. He gave them 2 tasks. The first was to play the world's most difficult repertoire, and second, to impress ordinary people who don't know classical music with their performance. Soon after, the professor sent the 2 of them the score for the competition performance. In order to win the competition, Inwoo secretly opened Jiho's score and switched the pieces inside. Jiho didn't discover this. The 2 of them then started practicing day and night with their respective competition pieces. The day before the competition, Inwoo secretly snuck into Jiho's room and switched the pieces back. The next day, the competition began. Jiho was stunned when he heard the piece he was about to play. It was completely different from the piece he had been practicing. Just then, he remembered that he had seen Inwoo come out of his room yesterday, and suddenly understood what was going on. There was no way he could go on stage without blushing, but obviously, even a musical genius like him could not play perfectly and smoothly at once. In the first round, Inwoo won successfully. The professor also scolded Jiho for not taking it seriously. In the second round, the professor invited 5 professionals and 5 amateur listeners, who had to impress these judges. But just as Inwoo was playing, Hayami walked in. Hayami didn't come to cheer him on, but as a loyal fan of Jiho to watch. Inwoo's jealousy began to overflow, and he lost his concentration while playing. But Jiho had the encouragement of his beloved girl, and he was best at playing this kind of heart-moving melody. Jiho successfully won the second round of the competition. The final competition was to play music that would move his mother. Inwoo gloated, "The heavens are definitely on my side. Could it be that my mother can't even tell the difference between my playing?" Jiho said, "My mother is fair. Have you forgotten the fire?" So Sora sat in the middle, with her 2 sons behind her, playing one after the other. But even a fool knows that she will choose her own flesh and blood. The first person to play was a song that Sora and Inwoo used to play when they were young. Sora had already initially determined that this person was Inwoo. However, when the second person played, it was obvious that the left-hand sound was out of harmony, and Inwoo's left little finger was injured. Sora then concluded that this person must be Inwoo. She confidently stood up to greet her precious son, but what she didn't expect was that the person who came out from behind was Jiho. Sora was confused. How is this possible? Jiho was even more convinced that his stepmother didn't love him. The professor immediately announced that Jiho would be his successor. Inwoo was unconvinced and walked out to challenge him, but everyone there was a witness. There was no turning back. Everyone left the room. Inwoo also collapsed and vented his anger at his mother. How could a mother not recognize her child's performance? That was the piece I played countless times with my mother when I was little. After returning home, Inwoo smashed things in the room like crazy. He was abandoned by his mother once again. But Jiho, who had won the competition, was not happy. He was the one who had been abandoned. Fortunately, Hayami was by Jiho's side. She could see how hurt and sad Jiho was. After spending so many days together, the 2 had long since become important to each other. In the 14 years since, Jiho had never forgotten the little girl he had played the piano with. Until now, when Hayami appeared by his side again. Jiho finally expressed his feelings. Hayami knows that Inwoo doesn't really love her. He just doesn't want to lose to his brother. Hayami doesn't hide the fact that she is attracted to Jiho and hopes that Inwoo will stop being jealous. Inwoo is greatly shocked and his hostility towards Jiho grows. He has taken away his father's company, the heir to Prof. And now he is trying to take away the girl he likes, with a strong desire to win. Inwoo starts to throw himself into the next composition competition. He must win over Jiho. Meanwhile, Jiho is in a sweet relationship with Hayami. Hayami even took him home to meet her mother. Her mother also prepared a table of delicious food for him, but the happy couple was caught by Hayami's brother. He had done some research behind their backs and realized that Jiho is Sora's son, and his younger sister is dating the son of their enemy. How can this be? Hayami's brother wants her to break up with Jiho. That person must never be related to our family. But he doesn't tell Hayami why. He doesn't want his sister to live with hatred either. Meanwhile, Jiho also comes to Inwoo's room to make peace. He wants to bring the brothers closer together. But Inwoo doesn't give him a good face at all. He says, "Brothers, but you haven't done a thing for me. What were you doing while I spent those years in the hospital?" Inwoo angrily walked away. Jiho, however, saw a poster for a songwriting competition on the table. Back in his room, Jiho picked up the song he had written. He had actually entered the songwriting competition as well. But thinking about what Inwoo had just said, Jiho felt deeply guilty. He threw the poster in the trash and decided to give up this opportunity to help his younger brother. But what he didn't expect was that Inwoo had a sinister plan. After learning that Jiho also wanted to participate in the competition, he even put Jiho's name on the composition he had written. He found a beggar on the street to help him send it to the competition organizer. Soon, Jiho received a call from the organizer. When he hurriedly arrived, Inwoo was starting his performance with tearful eyes. "Why did my brother plagiarize my work? Does my brother hate me that much?" Jiho was at a loss. At this time, he still had no idea what had happened. At the emergency meeting, the trial members had already unanimously determined that Jiho's piece was plagiarized. They even produced the envelope with Jiho's signature on it. They didn't believe a word of Jiho's defense. Inwoo, on the other hand, was still in the middle of his performance. No matter what Jiho said, he wouldn't say a word for him. When the two of them came out, Inwoo finally revealed his true face. The two brothers argued about it. If Jiho was charged with plagiarism, he may never be able to play the piano again, and that is exactly what Inwoo wants. Jiho couldn't control his emotions and swung a punch. At that moment everyone happened to rush out and witness the scene. Before leaving, Inwoo looked back at Jiho contemptuously. And Sora has been troubled by the production of the out-of-print famous painting piano for a long time. The 6 months she promised is almost up. If she doesn't make something by then, she will have to give an explanation to the shareholders and give up the management rights of the company. So Sora plans to hand over the piano production to Jiho, and says that she will help deal with the negative news about plagiarism. Jiho, who has no choice, can only grit his teeth and start looking for a way, because no production log was left. He decides to inspect each part by disassembling the out-of-print piano. After disassembling it, Jiho discovers that the internal material is high-quality spruce, but this thing is from Alaska. Finding it in such a short time was almost impossible. Inwoo received a phone call and hurried to a hospital. The old gardener's son told Inwoo that he had been entrusted by President Yu to give him this key. Inwoo went to the warehouse and found it full of precious Alaska spruce wood. This was the gift that his father had left for Inwoo. Only now did he realize the love his father had for him. With these precious materials, he could make the most perfect piano in the world. So Inwoo proposed a trade to Jiho. He wanted to enter the company and compete with Jiho to make the rare edition of the famous painting piano. Soon the two were immersed in research. Jiho was at a loss and couldn't find a substitute material. Inwoo's progress, on the other hand, was extremely smooth. A few days later, Inwoo held a press conference and publicly demonstrated the famous painting piano he had made. Sora sat down at the piano and began to play. Hearing the perfect sound, Jiho couldn't believe that Inwoo could make it in such a short time, and it also meant that Jiho would have to give up his current position. The next day, the two signed the transfer documents. Jiho no longer had a career and his love life was also in crisis. Hayami's brother directly approached Jiho and forcefully expressed his hope that he would break up with his sister. Upon Jiho's inquiry, he also directly told him the whole truth. Jiho was directly stunned. How is this possible? He grabbed Hayami's brother by the collar, and the brother was also full of anger. "I'm living in hell because of you too. How dare you like Hayami now?" After returning home, Jiho began searching online for news about the previous fire accident. He also saw a report about Sora being named a suspect, so Jiho called the police station to inquire about the truth of the accident. But Sora had already taken care of everything at the police station, and everything Jiho had investigated immediately reached her ears. When he returned home, Jiho directly asked his stepmother about the cause of his father's death. "He heard that the thief who came to our house was wronged." The stepmother couldn't sit still anymore and scolded Jiho for not standing by his father's side and instead defending a thief. After a few curses, she went directly to her room. Jiho's mind was also in a mess. If his mother really was such a horrible person, he would really go crazy. After returning to her room, Sora pondered for a long time who had actually told Jiho such things. She rushed shamelessly to Hayami's mother's house and scolded her. Before long, Hayami returned. Seeing Hayami, Sora was at a loss. Was the woman her 2 sons liked actually the family's child? Her mother also had no idea that her boyfriend was the son of her enemy. After leaving, Sora could not come to terms with what had happened for a long time. She began to sort out her thoughts. Since Hayami and Jiho were boyfriend and girlfriend, she had to keep Jiho quiet before he suspected her. Sora leaked to the media that Jiho had previously plagiarized. She also bribed the shareholders to pin the charge of embezzlement on Jiho. As a result, Jiho was taken directly to the police station for questioning. Fortunately, Jiho had not yet been arrested. Meanwhile, Hayami's brother had obtained the witness tape from Lawyer Wu through various connections. As soon as he arrived home, he saw Jiho at the door. Jiho didn't believe that his mother was that kind of person and didn't want to break up with Hayami, so his brother played the content of the tape directly to him. After hearing the content, Jiho roared at the sky. At this time, Hayami was standing guard at Jiho's house. She had heard about everything, but she still wants to hear the truth from Jiho's mouth. Facing Hayami's questioning, all he could say was "I'm sorry." Jiho returned home angrily and questioned Sora to what extent he had to go. "Is it because I know the secret of my father's death that I am being driven to the wall like this?" At this moment, Jiho no longer intends to believe anything the stepmother says. All he feels is anger. Because of this incident, Hayami broke up with Jiho, and the powerful stepmother was still sitting at home leisurely drinking coffee. But she suddenly received a text message. The picture on it was the bloody vest she was wearing on the day of the fire accident. It turned out that Hayami's brother had been working for a competitor of Myri Group before, and the chairman of that rival company was Sora's first love, President Kim. A few years ago, President Kim was still a penniless man, and Sora married President Yu by taking all of President Kim's property. She even tried to kill President Kim to keep him quiet. Hayami's brother became President Kim's right-hand man, and the two of them shared the same goal, to get revenge on Sora. So President Kim negotiated a deal with Lawyer Wu and obtained Sora's bloodstained waistcoat. He handed it over to Hayami's family, along with the audio tape. Now the physical evidence is basically certain. But after all this time, if Sora refuses to admit it, this evidence will seem very weak. So the brother called Sora and threatened her with the photos. They met outside. The brother wanted Sora to tell him everything that happened back then. After the phone call, the brother also packed his things and prepared to set off. President Kim was a little uneasy and had planned to go with him, but the brother decided to deal with these matters himself. He and Hayami parted resolutely and embarked on a path of no return. And Sora here suddenly hurriedly left and ran into Inwoo. Seeing that his mother was in a bad state, Inwoo followed her, but his mother had already got into a taxi. Coincidentally, Jiho returned at this time. Inwoo then drove off directly in his car and followed his mother all the way to a remote warehouse. At this time, his brother had already produced all the evidence and threatened Sora. He told Sora to kneel down and confess to his father, but Sora's attitude was even stronger than he had imagined. Sora insisted that he had not killed anyone. His brother excitedly grabbed Sora by the collar, but just then, Inwoo appeared. He punched his brother to the ground, but his appearance was not a good thing for his brother. His brother planned to take this opportunity to tell Inwoo all of Sora's crimes. Inwoo saw his mother fall and rushed up to teach his brother a lesson. The two of them wrestled together, but obviously Inwoo was no match for his brother. Sora panicked when she saw her son get hurt. She stopped her brother and said that she would tell everything. Sora began to stammer, and when she was about to speak again, Inwoo, with his last ounce of strength, rushed directly at his brother. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Inwoo went into a state of shock. Sora reassured him that she would never let her son become a murderer. When the two of them reached the door, Sora realized that Inwoo had driven Jiho's car. All of the problems were suddenly solved. She had already thought of a foolproof plan, so Sora took away all the evidence and sent a text message to Jiho on her brother's phone, asking him to come to the warehouse. Jiho, who had received the text message, immediately took a taxi after realizing that his car was not there. When he arrived at the scene, his brother was lying outside dying. Jiho went up to check on the situation, but was seen by a security guard on patrol. Poor Jiho was thus taken to the police station as a suspect. In order to clear Inwoo's name, Sora changed her son's clothes and sent him to a bar to attend a friend's birthday party. Sora herself burned all the evidence, so that she could never be threatened again. The next day, Inwoo woke up and asked his mother the truth about his father's death, and why she was being threatened by Hayami's brother. Sora was afraid that her son would turn away from her if she couldn't tell him the truth, even though she kept on defending herself. Inwoo already had an answer in his heart. Inwoo was so angry that he started speeding on the street. He was distracted and almost hit a pedestrian crossing the street. Fortunately, her father was able to protect her and she was unharmed. But this action also made Inwoo think of something. At the scene of the fire accident that year, there was a man who blocked the falling chandelier for himself. That person was Hayami's father. Hayami's brother, who was in the intensive care unit, was actually rescued. Inwoo, who was not far away, became nervous when he heard the news. If his brother told the truth, then he and his mother would be completely finished. But because of his severe injuries, his brother still had to wear a respirator. President Kim volunteered to stay here and watch over him. He asked Hyami and her mother to go home and pack some luggage to bring over. In the evening, when they went out for some fresh air, a man in a white coat walked into the hospital room. He went to his brother's bedside and took off the breathing apparatus from his mouth with his own hands. The next day, when Hyami and her mother arrived, her brother had already been pronounced dead. Her mother quickly realized that it must have been that woman who killed her child. She rushed to Sora's house and slapped her. Sora, with a straight face, threatened Hyami's mother not to appear in front of her again. But when she arrived at the company, she received a text message from Hyami's brother's phone saying that he wanted to give her a gift. Sora, with a panicked face, immediately rushed home, but she was still a step too late. The envelope was opened by Inwoo. Inside was a backup tape of the previous recording. Sora desperately tried to prove his innocence to Inwoo. Inwoo also told his mother what he had remembered. Under his son's relentless questioning, Sora had no choice but to confess her crime. Your father is going to give the company to Jiho. There's really nothing I can do, even at this moment. Sora is still looking for excuses, saying that it's all for Inwoo. Inwoo firmly stated that even if he hates Jiho, he can't do such a thing. He can't become a monster like his mother. Sora saw that she couldn't convince her son, so she had to compromise. She said that she would find a way to save Jiho, as long as it can ease your guilt, as long as you can forgive me. So Sora went to the police station to see Jiho. She took out a document to study in the United States and told Jiho never to come back. This was the only way to end the struggle between the few people. Jiho didn't want to leave like this, no matter what. He would wait here until the real murderer, who knew that Sora would threaten Hyami's personal safety. Jiho knew that Sora was the kind of person who could do that kind of thing. He could only compromise. Sora went home and packed up all of Jiho's things. Then she immediately took him to the airport. She felt relieved when she saw Jiho start boarding the plane, but as soon as she turned around, Sora received a call from her mother. Inwoo had taken a large amount of sleeping pills. She rushed home without stopping. Fortunately, Inwoo was rescued in time and did not die. When Inwoo woke up the next day, he didn't even want to look at his mother's face. To him, his mother had already died yesterday. He would never recognize the person who killed his father as his mother. Inwoo didn't want to say another word to his mother and turned his head directly. Sora was heartbroken. After finally ending the evil karma, she had lost her son's heart. Time passed like this for more than half a year. Inwoo, as the president of the future group, was running the company successfully. His mother also arranged a marriage of interest for Inwoo. Soon Inwoo was going to be engaged to Prof. His daughter Lucy. But after so long, Inwoo has never forgiven his mother. In his eyes, the two are just bound by fate. Soon, Inwoo and Lucy held an engagement ceremony. Everyone stood up to toast their love. The host also invited a pianist to play for Inwoo, but Inwoo glanced over and noticed the man playing the piano. The familiar figure made him unable to resist and go over to find out what was going on. And the person sitting behind him was actually his brother Jiho, who was supposed to be in the United States. Sora's glass of red wine slipped from her hands and fell. While Jiho was walking over to say hello, a man in a trench coat walked out. He cursed Sora as an unrepentant capitalist. At the critical moment, Jiho took the fatal stab for his stepmother. The man was immediately subdued, but Jiho also lay on the ground, dying. But no one knew that this was the first step in his return for revenge. A year ago, Jiho did not choose to fly to the United States, but as soon as he left the airport, he was taken by a group of men and put in a car. The men tied him up and took him to an abandoned warehouse where they gave him a good beating. They weren't men sent by Sora, but men under President Kim's command. It turned out that before this, President Kim had already found the fake doctor who took Hyami's brother's respirator off. But the fake doctor had already agreed with Sora on his testimony. He even accused the person who ordered him to do it of being Jiho. So President Kim tied Jiho up and wanted to take revenge for Hyami's brother. Jiho, however, looked confused and said he knew nothing about it. The next day, President Kim brought the fake doctor to Jiho and let the two face off, but the man only knew Jiho's name and didn't know what he looked like. President Kim swung a punch directly. He threatened the man to tell him the real culprit behind the scene. The man finally couldn't resist any longer. The person who instructed him was Secretary Woo, who was by Sora's side. Then President Kim got the black box of the taxi that Jiho took to the scene at that time, which completely cleared Jiho's name. At that time, there was also a witness who saw Inwoo get into Jiho's car and understood the whole story. President Kim and Jiho also had the same goal of revenge. President Kim told Jiho that Inwoo was the murderer. This is all a trap set by Sora to hide her son's crime, but they couldn't take any action without conclusive evidence. Soon, Jiho joined forces with President Kim, and a year later staged a scene in which he sacrificed himself to save his mother. Jiho became Sora's savior. The incident quickly made headlines. Sora knew that Jiho had come back with evil intentions, so she didn't want him to live at home. Jiho said he would go to a hotel, but he had already planned everything. After they came out, Sora and Jiho were surrounded by reporters. Jiho has gone from being a rebellious stepson to a dutiful son of the nation. Everyone is very concerned about why he would do such a thing. And Jiho, like his stepmother who used to wear a hypocritical mask, talked eloquently in front of the camera about the deep mother-son relationship between the two. When the reporter asked Jiho if he was planning to go home now, Jiho immediately threw the question back at his stepmother. With no choice, Sora had to steel herself and help Jiho to the car. When Jiho returned home, he went to Inwoo's room on his own initiative to scold him. He noticed at a glance that Inwoo was preparing the music for the 11th composition competition. Jiho pretended to be unconcerned, but the show was just beginning. That night, at her mother's request, Sora brought Jiho some tea. But what she didn't expect was that Jiho's stomach, which had taken the knife for him, had no scars. For a moment, the object in her hand fell to the ground. Jiho said, "I remember that you didn't really save me before." Sora rushed forward and wanted to slap him, but Jiho didn't give her the chance. "In the past, I tolerated it because you were my mother, but not anymore." Sora never imagined that Jiho, who had returned with nothing, would dare to argue with her. But the more worthless a person is, the less they fear losing. As long as his current identity is Sora's savior, then he has already won. The next day, Sora told her son and the lawyer that Jiho had not been injured. They had planned it all. But that also meant that not only the murderer, but also the hospital doctor had been bribed. Was there someone behind Jiho? The next day, Sora learned from the maid that Jiho was going to the hospital with his grandmother to have his wound checked. So that day, she called the police and set off for the hospital with the reporters. During the re-examination, Jiho deliberately asked his grandmother to wait for him outside. While she waited outside, he then went into the room alone. Before long, Sora arrived with the police and reporters. She insisted that Jiho was faking his injuries and that the truth would soon be revealed, so they barged in without knocking. Sora said she had come to check on her son's injuries. The doctor could only remove Jiho's bandages. Sora couldn't believe it. How could this be? She threatened the doctor to remove the fake wounds quickly, or I'll call the director and have you fired. The doctor was also angry. Jiho's wound was still inflamed. "Are you insulting me?" The reporter took out his camera and started taking pictures. Sora didn't expect to have a stone thrown at her own feet, but that was just the beginning. Soon Sora discovered that a newly emerged musical instrument group had poached 5 of their researchers. The group decided to hire the most popular pianist as the company's spokesperson, and bought all his songs as the company's advertising songs. One day, the family went out to dinner, and Sora also invited an old friend. This person was her first love, President Kim. Over the past year, President Kim has been approaching Sora on the grounds that he can't forget his girlfriend's first love. Sora also went from rejecting him at first to finally rekindling their old feelings. She completely let down her guard against President Kim. She even had plans to get back together. But obviously, Inwoo would not accept this man. He got up and was about to leave after a few words, but just a few steps away, a familiar tune came from behind. This tune is exactly what Inwoo submitted to the 11th composition competition, and the person playing the piano is the spokesperson hired by their company at a high price. Inwoo questioned where this thing was obtained from, but Jack asked him back, "Do you think I'm copying someone else's music?" Soon, Inwoo's plagiarism made the headlines. Just like Jiho, who he once slandered, now he has suffered the same thing, and because Jack is now so popular, he has directly registered the copyright. Inwoo now has no way out. He realized that it was most likely Jiho's revenge, and hurriedly stopped Jiho on his way. He then gave him a punch. He told Jiho to go to the media and clarify that this was not the truth. If this was confirmed, then he would be forever disowned by the music industry. Jiho just wanted him to try what it feels like to be framed. Seeing Jiho's strong attitude, Inwoo grabbed his collar and threatened him. Just then, a group of reporters emerged from afar. Why is this scene so familiar? Inwoo looked at Jiho's back. He had completely fallen into his trap. The next day, Jiho came to Inwoo's office with an important document. When Inwoo opened it, it turned out to be the parking violation notice, taken in front of the post office when he falsely accused Jiho of plagiarism. Seeing that Inwoo was feigning amnesia, Jiho took out the surveillance photo. Inwoo was clearly captured holding the document envelope. He knew that he had no way out. He asked Jiho what he should do. Jiho's answer was that he would hold a press conference at 1 o'clock tomorrow. If you want to preserve the last dignity of a musician, then tell the truth yourself and repent sincerely. Inwoo had never imagined that he had been cornered into a dead end. He went crazy and yelled, but it didn't change the facts at all. The next day, the press conference was held as scheduled. Inwoo also sat on the podium with a stiff neck. Just then, Jiho walked in from the door. Inwoo immediately clarified that Jiho had not plagiarized his song in the first place. For a moment, there was a flurry of discussion from the audience, but at the same time, Inwoo said that this song was indeed his own song. But just then, Jack walked in through the door. He denied Inwo's claims and insisted that Inwo had plagiarized. Jack firmly stated that it was his own work. Inwo could no longer hold back his anger and grabbed Jack by the collar and asked him if he had been instructed by Jiho. The reporters rushed forward and filmed the scene, and it was only after Sora's desperate attempts to stop it that the farce temporarily ended. In order to keep his son from being disqualified, Sora tried every means to help Inwo smooth things over and gain some attention. But the association still revoked his compositional qualifications and would not allow him to release any works for 3 years. Inwo was tortured by Jiho and was about to go crazy. At this point, he had nothing to fear. Inwo said that as long as he could keep his father's company, he could do anything. But that day, the music department of a domestic university only planned to prepare for a bidding meeting for a piano supplier, but the Myri group had always been the exclusive supplier. Sora couldn't understand why they suddenly did that. The person in charge said that the Queen Musical Instrument Company, which was competing with them, had also sent someone, and the man who walked in from the door was Jiho. Sora and Inwo started glaring at each other. Jiho, however, acted very calmly. Soon, both sides began to introduce the advantages of this bidding. Inwo's side was a famous painting piano made of top-quality materials. As soon as Jiho took the stage, he pointed out that although the materials of the famous painting piano were good, the price was too expensive. He said that his company is developing a new piano that guarantees the sound quality and is only 1/3 of the price of the famous painting piano. On the way back, Sora and Inwo were very anxious, and they didn't know who the powerful investor behind Jiho was. But if they really made this kind of cost-effective piano, then the future group would definitely be hit hard. So Inwo planned to go to the research institute to take a look, but he accidentally heard that Chief Min, who was in charge of the research project, was turning down the invitation from the Queen's musical instrument. This is not a good opportunity for Inwo. He asked Chief Min to spy on them and tell him the production secrets. Soon, Chief Min came back with the research report. Mirai Musical Instruments plan to use both foreign and domestic wood to make the frame. After reading the research report, Inwo was also a little surprised. In his opinion, this was an impossible plan, but the experimental results were already out. The samples did have a good sound. Then Inwo took out the production log of his own piano. But what he didn't expect was that Chief Min was actually a double spy. He wore glasses with a video function, and the images were transmitted in real time to Jiho and President Kim. With this production log, Jiho was already more than halfway there. Now, as long as they could find a real substitute for the wood, there would be no problem. At this time, Inwo had no doubts. He decided to follow the research report he had brought and invested a large amount of money to purchase wood from Germany. But now the company was short on funds, so they borrowed 30 billion won from their former partners. Then they began working day and night on the production research. On the other side, President Kim also pulled Hayami into his revenge team. He proved to Hayami that Jiho was innocent, and also told her that Inwo was the one behind her brother's death. Hayami agreed to work with Queen Musical Instruments to avenge her brother. But before that, she had to find evidence that Inwo was the culprit. The next day, Hayami resigned from the barbecue restaurant. But before she left, Inwo came. It turned out that Inwo had been secretly helping Hayami behind the scenes all this time. The two went to a cafe and talked about what happened a year ago. Hayami said that the workers found a special suit button at the crime scene at the time, and the button was engraved with the 4 English letters MLB. Hayami began to test Inwo. Sure enough, even such ridiculous words were enough to confuse Inwo. After returning home, Inwo began to check his suit buttons. He threw all his clothes on the floor and told the maid to burn them all. Sora came in and couldn't understand her son who had lost control like this. Inwo also told his mother that there are only a handful of people in our country who can afford the MLB brand. As long as the police start investigating, it won't be long before they get to me. But Sora didn't believe this at all. How could there still be evidence after so much time has passed and the police have searched so many times? She tried to go over and comfort him, but Inwo pushed her away. Inwo would never rely on his mother again. The next day, he went to the factory alone and asked the person in charge about the button. The person in charge told Inwo that the button had already been handed over to the victim's sister. It was expected to be handed over to the police as evidence soon. Inwo became very restless. As soon as he left, the person in charge handed President Kim a tape recording of their conversation. Afterwards, Inwo found Hayami and tried to find out the whereabouts of the button under the pretext of showing concern. He immediately said that he was here to help Jiho with his inquiries. But what he didn't expect was that Hayami actually raised the doubts at the time. When his brother was admitted to the hospital, there were signs of injuries from the fight, but Jiho didn't have any injuries at all. Inwo's abnormality at this time was simply too obvious. After returning home, he told his mother about this matter. Compared to Inwo, Sora was very calm. Sora said she would take care of the rest, but Inwo questioned her. Do you want Hayami to become like her brother? He warned his mother not to touch Hayami with a 10-foot pole. If Hayami gets hurt, I will never forgive you. That day, Hayami and her mother were walking outside when they were robbed by a motorcycle thief. This motorcycle thief was sent by Sora. Sora thought he had grabbed the button, but found a note in the bag. The note said, No secret is forever. What was even more troublesome was that something even more difficult had happened. The product presentation for the supplier bidding was tomorrow. They discovered that the sound of the finished sample was completely wrong. Inwo had followed the research report exactly. How could this have happened? He called Chief Min, but the number had been disconnected. Inwo finally realized something was wrong and rushed to Jiho's office. Did they even use a spy to frame me? Jiho laughed and sneaked around behind him. That should be your specialty. Just as Inwo gritted his teeth in anger, he saw the famous painting on Jiho's desk. Piano Production Journal. Inwo completely gave up on Jiho. From now on, you are no longer my brother. Jiho grabbed him, saying, from now on, I will not treat you as a brother either. At this time, Hayami walked in from the door. Finally, she revealed everything, and heard Jiho's name for Hayami. Inwoo then realized that the two of them had teamed up. Hayami told Inwoo that she already knew the real murderer of her brother. It wasn't Jiho, and soon the truth would be made public. Inwoo went to the beach alone and sobered up. He didn't understand why he had become like this and why he had come to this point. At this moment, Inwoo's heart was full of remorse. If he could, he hoped that this was all a dream. At this time, Jiho was also ready to put an end to this matter. President Kim brought the tape of the testimony during the fire to Hayami's mother. However, because the prosecution period had passed, the murderer could not be legally punished. Hayami's mother went to the police station to submit multiple pieces of evidence, hoping only to clear her husband's injustice. Soon, the news that the investigation would be reopened reached Sora's ears. Anxious, Sora found Hayami's mother and ordered her to move out immediately. If you promise never to come back, I'll give you more money than you can spend. But Hayami's mother paid her no heed. Seeing her opponent's tough attitude, Sora even threatened to harm Hayami. Whatever happens in the future, you brought it on yourself. In order to teach the persistent Hayami's mother a lesson, Sora tricked Hayami into going to an abandoned warehouse and locked her up. Hayami was very scared and helpless, curling up in a corner at a loss. But soon the family realized that Hayami had gone missing. Jiho started calling Hayami frantically, but he could never get through. Finally, he saw the address of the warehouse that Hayami had searched for before leaving from her office computer. Jiho hurriedly looked for it, but by this time, Hayami had already fainted by the warehouse. Jiho carried Hayami to the hospital for examination. After returning home, he also went to Sora's bedside. Jiho knew that this was all Sora's doing. He clenched his fists. This time, he would strike hard. The next day, Jiho released the recording of the eyewitness. The media was in an uproar. Sora, however, had already cultivated a strong inner strength. She calmly asked the reporter to release a clarification stating that this was a conspiracy by a competitor. But this news alone was not convincing. She decided to find the eyewitness Lisa to come forward and deny everything herself. But Jiho found Lisa before Sora could act. He hoped that Lisa would just tell the truth as it happened. What happened in the study that day? And how did my father die? Lisa's eyes flickered, but she didn't refuse, so she just acquiesced. But after leaving, Lisa got into Sora's car. Compared to Jiho, Sora could definitely bring her more benefits. Sora promised to meet Lisa's every condition, as long as she denied the voice on the tape at the press conference. The next day the press conference was held as scheduled. Sora first denied all the recent rumors, and then invited the owner of the tape, Lisa. Jiho stood below, silently watching them. At this time, he still did not know that Lisa had already defected. Sora thus temporarily escaped disaster. And immediately afterwards, at the product description meeting for the piano bidding, Inwoo also found a new substitute for wood. He said that he could supply it at half the price of the famous painting piano. Inwoo and Jiho played on the stage to demonstrate their respective products. In the end, the judges gave this opportunity to the Mirai Group because of the favorable price. The university wants to sign an order for 1,000 units, but what the university doesn't know is that the piano Inwoo just played is not made of the new material. If he wants to make 1,000 pianos with the original material, he will definitely suffer a huge loss. If he fails to deliver in the end, he will have to pay triple the liquidated damages. The only thing Inwoo can do is to develop a substitute for wood within this month. But obviously, the plan that Inwoo stole from Jiho cannot be successfully developed. The wood he bought for 30 billion won basically became useless. And if the 30 billion won can't be paid back within a month, the future group will face the crisis of bankruptcy. Just when Inwoo was desperate, the loan company took the initiative to extend the loan date by 1 month. Sora instantly beamed with joy, thinking that this was the heavens helping her. However, she had no idea what kind of terrible trap was behind her. The agent of the loan company was none other than Jiho. Sora wanted Jiho to help her sign the extension contract. However, Jiho put forward a condition, that is to let her personally apologize to her dead father. Sora said, "Can your dead father come back just because I apologize? Can your father forgive me?" But Jiho told her, "At least we can be justified to our father, can't we?" Seeing Jiho's tough attitude, Sora directly said, "I killed the person myself. I was bullied by your good father for 10 years. He should have died a long time ago." Immediately after that, the curtain behind them fell to the ground. Behind the curtain stood dozens of reporters. In-woo protected his mother and walked out of the conference room. But Sora was still in a daze. She sat in the car and shed tears. But no one knew if those tears were a confession to her husband or if they were tears of fear at what was about to happen. That night, Jiho packed his bags and prepared to move out. But as soon as he arrived in the trunk to put things away, Sora rushed out and dragged him to her car. Sora drove like crazy, taking Jiho on a wild ride through the streets. At this point, she no longer felt any fear. Her company was about to go bankrupt, and her own affairs had been exposed. She had already come to the idea of dying with Jiho. When Sora woke up again, she was already in the hospital. Fortunately, the truck braked in time, and she was not seriously injured. As for Jiho, who was in front of her, he was only injured with a broken left hand. Jiho would not let Sora die so easily, because there was still a lot of sin to atone for. He told Sora to go to the police station as soon as she was discharged from the hospital to help Hayami's father clear his name, and then ask Hayami's family for forgiveness. But obviously Sora wouldn't give in so easily. Now that the prosecution period has passed, even if everything is investigated clearly, the law cannot sanction her. But then all kinds of difficult things happened. The university proposed that Myri Group pay 3 times the liquidated damages, and planned to hand over the supply of pianos to Queen Musical Instruments, and their loan company also took 30% of In-woo's shares. The company is now in a precarious situation. In-woo has no choice but to take action. While Jiho is away, he has someone steal a log made of wood instead. Everything seems to be going well, but when In-woo gets the log the next day, he discovers that it is completely blank. This was the gift Jiho had given him. In-woo was completely desperate. He went to the hospital, hoping that Jiho would let him off. He even knelt on the ground and begged. But in Jiho's eyes, someone like In-woo was not worthy of pity. His heart had already died. Once upon a time, he had truly regarded In-woo as his younger brother. But now, no matter how many times In-woo kneeled, whether it was 100 times or 1,000 times, he would never forgive him again. In-woo couldn't reason with Jiho, so he went to Hayami, hoping she could help stop Jiho. But obviously, Hayami wouldn't pay any attention to the pleas of someone who had killed her brother. Hayami was the one who wanted In-woo to get his comeuppance the most. Soon, In-woo went to the police station. He even testified falsely that he had seen Hayami's father stealing from his house 14 years ago. Sora, on the other side, also gave an interview where she admitted to killing her husband, but blamed Hayami's father for starting the fire, and said that he threatened her Alzheimer's-stricken mother into taking the expensive clothes and jewelry. In front of the reporters, Sora portrayed herself as a poor victim who was bullied by her husband and mother-in-law. Jiho provided the police with a video recording, which was the testimony of the Alzheimer's-stricken grandmother as a witness. In the video, the grandmother apologized to Hayami's mother. Because of her own mistake, Hayami's mother lost her husband. The video made everyone silent, but Sora said that her mother-in-law had dementia. Her words could not be used as testimony. At this time, Jiho brought the doctor's diagnosis. In-woo believed that her grandmother might have made a false statement under threat. Jiho then produced a confirmation that the lawyer and nurse were present. This time, the two of them had nothing to say. The police said that they would conduct further investigations, and the matter came to a temporary end. After dealing with Sora, Jiho's next target was In-woo. While In-woo was eating out with his mother, the waiter brought him his car keys. Soon after, the two received the same text message on their phones. The video on it was the black box content of the taxi Jiho took that night. On the other side, Hayami had already handed the black box over to the police. This object also proved that Jiho was not the criminal. But obviously, Sora would not sit idly by. She used money to find many witnesses, and asked them to lie and say that they had seen Jiho drive off that day. Not only the housekeeper but also the people from the construction site all gave the same testimony. So Jiho was once again invited in by the police. The black box couldn't clear him either, because it was very likely that Jiho had taken a taxi back after the crime. With the witnesses now in place, Jiho was also to be transferred to the prosecutor's office. The day of the trial was fast approaching. The housekeeper gave false testimony as a witness, insisting that Jiho drove the car away from the entrance at that time. However, the neighbor who was also present at the same time stated that he had seen In-woo driving Jiho's car. In-woo, however, had a solid alibi as he had gone to a party. He also said that he had never used someone else's car even once. Jiho, on the other hand, had a strong motive for the crime. He was retaliating against his brother for breaking up his relationship with Hayami. It seems that the situation is extremely unfavorable for Jiho at the moment. Next, Sora was questioned as a witness. She insisted that she had not met Hayami's brother. She was at home with lawyer Woo at the time, having a meeting, so she had postponed the meeting until the next morning. At this point, Jiho's lawyer called the taxi driver who had driven her to the warehouse to testify. This evidence perfectly exposed Sora's lies. The lawyer rebuked Sora for perjury since she had dared to defy the court. Sora suddenly came up with an excuse. She said she had seen something she shouldn't have. That was Jiho and Hayami's brother fighting. After the break, Jiho's side also called their last witness. At this time, The staff wheeled in a mysterious man in a wheelchair, at the judge's request. The man removed his mask and hat, and his appearance made everyone's eyes widen. Hayami's brother, who had died a year ago, had returned alive. It turned out that long before Sora had someone remove his oxygen mask, the foresight President Kim had transferred Hayami's brother. After a year in a coma, the brother had fully regained consciousness. In court, the brother completely refuted what Sora had just said. The person who pushed him down that day was not Jiho, but Inwoo, who was sitting behind him. Sora said that the person who had already had a funeral was actually alive and well. This court hearing was completely invalid. Finally, Runha couldn't stand it anymore. It's all over now. What's the point of saying that? After the trial, Hayami's brother also reunited with his family. Mom and Hayami complained about why their brother didn't contact them for a year. But wasn't their brother thinking about them all the time? At that time, the probability of him recovering was only 5%, and if Sora knew that, he probably wouldn't have survived to this day. Hiding this was perhaps the best way to go. Sora and Inwo were already being investigated at the police station. At this time, Sora was still fighting for his life, taking all the blame. It doesn't matter if she gets arrested, but she absolutely has to protect her son. But her story was not at all convincing. When the police asked her how she had dragged Hayami's brother outside by herself, Sora was at a loss for words. And Inwoo, who was next door, had always kept silent. His heart had already died. Tomorrow was the second trial. Jiho had also obtained more solid evidence. They had obtained a testimony from the person who had taken Hayami's brother's oxygen mask at the time. The fact that the man had received money from Secretary Wu had also been confirmed. All that was needed was for the trial to begin the next day in order to perfectly establish Sora's guilt. On the day of the trial, the prosecutor produced a statement of the suspicious circumstances surrounding Hayami's sudden death. Removing an oxygen mask from a seriously ill person when no one is around is definitely a criminal act. The prosecutor said that he had invited a witness. Sora couldn't believe it. Naekayon. Soon, President Kim led the witness in. The man sat in the witness box and admitted that he had been instructed to remove Hayami's oxygen mask. In response to the prosecutor's questioning, the man said that the person who instructed him was Lawyer Wu. Everyone was in an uproar. Jiho immediately stood up and accused the witness of lying. The trial had to be temporarily suspended. Jiho soon found President Kim. He couldn't understand why President Kim would do such a thing, but President Kim just explained that he didn't want Jiho to get hurt, and asked him to let go and leave the matter to him. What Jiho didn't know was that President Kim and Sora had a child together, and that child was Jiho. It turned out that more than 20 years ago, stepmother Ms. Luo, in order to make Sora marry President Yu, had sent the child to an orphanage after she gave birth. Ms. Luo also lied to Sora that it was a stillbirth that never breathed. But not long ago she discovered that she could not find the whereabouts of that child. She told Sora and President Kim about it, hoping they could help look for the child together. But after so many years, it was not an easy task. Finally, one day, Ms. Luo found a witness who had witnessed Secretary Wu taking the child from the orphanage. Following this clue, she thought of the fact that both Jiho and Sora were allergic to spinach, and that President Kim's blood type was the same as Jiho's. Ms. Luo tentatively took the toothbrushes of the two people to do a paternity test, but what she didn't expect was that the two were actually mother and son. So Ms. Luo asked Secretary Wu to confirm this matter, and only then did she learn that it was President Yu who took the child, and placed Jiho with a grandmother in the countryside to raise him. So he knew from the beginning that Sora had given birth to a child. For a moment, Ms. Luo felt like the world was collapsing. The mother and son turned against each other and became complete enemies. Why did such a thing happen? Then Ms. Luo told President Kim about this matter. She must prevent Jiho from taking revenge. President Kim was also completely confused, recalling all that he and Jiho had planned. At this moment, his heart was full of guilt and pain for Jiho. There was no other way, so he could only let that man make false testimony. He also discussed with Ms. Luo to temporarily keep this secret. But that day, Sora overheard their conversation. In order to confirm the truth, Sora went to Jiho's house alone and found the plum blossom handkerchief she had left behind many years ago. But just then, Jiho appeared. When Sora asked what the handkerchief was about, Jiho's answer was that it belonged to his biological mother and was the last thought his father left him before he died. Sora was afraid that Jiho knew everything. She even spoke harshly to Jiho, telling him not to try to find his real mother. Aren't you afraid of being abandoned by your mother for the second time? After returning home, Sora pretended to be fine, and even thought that Jiho could never be her child. How could a mother not recognize her son? It wasn't until Ms. Luo took out the paternity certificate that Sora realized President Yu's true intention. He wanted you to fight with your own son. That's why he took Jiho into the family. Sora looked at the paternity test in her hands. She couldn't believe that such a melodramatic thing would happen to her. The next day, Sora sat at home alone, lost in thought, thinking about the bits and pieces that had happened with Jiho over the years. She couldn't hold back and rushed directly to Jiho's house. But just as she was about to open the door, Reason stopped her. She dried her tears and prepared to leave, but Jiho was standing behind her. He told Sora to go to the police station and confess her crimes. This was the last chance he gave Sora, but Sora was determined not to admit her identity to Jiho. Their relationship started with a curse and would never change. After Jiho entered the house, Sora tore up the paternity test. Her child had died more than 20 years ago. After Sora returned home, she learned that the company had held an emergency meeting and planned to remove her as the chairman. But soon after that was the annual concert. In order to salvage the company's image, Inwoo decided to go ahead with the concert despite his mother's objections. Not only was Inwoo unable to find any musicians, but the audience also protested by returning their tickets. What made him even more desperate was that Jiho's Queen Musical Instruments was also holding a charity concert at the same time. But even so, Inwoo did not flinch, even if he was the only one. He had to complete the performance, but as soon as he took the stage, he noticed various abusive banners being pulled up in the audience. When he sat down at the piano, the people in the audience threw rubbish at him one after the other. Then everyone left the venue, leaving only Ms. Luo and his mother. Inwoo just played as if no one was there. His eyes were full of sadness. This was definitely the most miserable performance of his music career. After the song, Ms. Luo stood up and applauded for him, but when Inwoo looked in the direction of his mother, she was gone. In fact, Sora received a call from President Kim, learned that he wanted to confess everything to Jiho today. He hurried over to stop him. Sora did not want to hide out of selfishness, but because of Jiho's love for President Yu, President Kim began to waver after hearing this. But Sora had finally stopped him. Ms. Luo's phone rang again. She decided to clean up this mess for Sora. Soon Ms. Luo arrived at Jiho's concert. She began to apologize to Jiho. Then she said, "I know who your real mother is." Just as it seemed like all was lost, Sora arrived. She tried to pull Ms. Luo away, but Jiho stopped her. He had to know who his mother was. Jiho learned that Sora was his real mother and completely broke down. How could his mother be the woman in front of him? The woman he was about to send to prison himself? Sora was determined to hide the truth. When Jiho questioned her, Sora denied, "You're not my son." Her reply relieved Jiho. Without looking back, Jiho walked out. Sora also collapsed to the ground and cried like a tearful person. What kind of mother doesn't want to recognize her son? But obviously, Jiho already had the answer in his heart. In the past few days, everyone's strange behavior and President Kim's temporary change of the witness's testimony, Jiho went to his father's grave. He looked at the suicide note his father left him in his hands. He finally understood that the letter was not meant for him, but for his real son, Inwoo. For a moment, Jiho's heart was filled with anger. "Did you really bring me home to take revenge on your mother?" Soon, Jiho began to divert all the funds of the previous loan to the future group. At the same time, because the company's funds were insufficient, it was unable to settle with the German supplier. The other party also sued for double damages for breach of contract. Several people were panicking. This meant that the company would have to declare bankruptcy. Heartbroken, Sora went to President Kim and said she wanted to leave everything behind and go away with him. President Kim couldn't understand why she wanted to abandon Jiho. It was clear that she had long since lost President Kim's trust. President Kim said, "If you want to go abroad, then first accept the retribution you deserve. After that, ask Jiho for forgiveness and recognize him as your son. Until then, you absolutely cannot leave." But what no one expected was that Lawyer Wu set a trap that day. He called everyone over and in front of Sora, exposed President Kim's true identity. At this point, President Kim had no intention of hiding anything anymore. He confessed everything and also revealed that he was seeking revenge. Sora dropped her ring and the two of them completely fell out. She turned her head and told Inwoo about it. The two of them decided to join forces and work together to take Mirai Group back from Jiho. That day, Inwoo came to President Kim's office and also learned the truth about Jiho's background by accident. He is actually the son of his mother and President Kim. Inwoo's heart ached. "As long as I'm gone, the three of you will be a happy family, right?" This news once again strengthened his heart of revenge. This time he will definitely not let go of Jiho. The next day was the day Queen Musical Instruments delivered the pianos to the university. But while everyone was eating, a group of men rushed to the car and robbed all the pianos. Hayami heard the sound of the building's engine and immediately ran downstairs to check. She even blocked the truck with her body. Soon Hayami was taken to the hospital. Jiho was very distressed. Just a few days ago, he had broken up with Hayami. It was because he was afraid that she would get hurt if she was around. But just a few days later, Hayami was already lying in the hospital. He guessed that Sora must have done this, so Jiho rushed to Sora's office and vented his anger. Sora found Inwoo and asked him why he had done such a thing. She hoped that Inwoo would stop and let her do it, but Inwoo had already lost his trust in his mother. He asked his mother how long she wanted to hide it from him. Inwoo pushed his mother away with all his strength. "You shed your hypocritical tears right in front of Jiho." Sora never expected things to develop to this point, but the blame can only be placed on her evil deeds. This may be the retribution that heaven has brought upon her. Soon Hayami in the hospital woke up. Because she missed Jiho so much, she ran to Jiho's house alone when her mother wasn't looking. At this time, Jiho was still cold towards Hayami. He just coldly drove her back. Hayami couldn't hold back her heartache and rushed up to hug Jiho. "We have finally come this far. Why do you want to push me away again?" There was no way for Jiho but to tell her the truth. "My mother is Sora, the one who killed your family, so we are destined to not be able to end up together. I am someone who cannot protect you." Jiho turned away heartlessly. Jiho turned away with a heart full of sorrow. What neither of them knew was that Sora had heard their entire conversation around the corner. To make up for the harm she had caused the two children, Sora sent Hayami a text message, telling her the location of the piano that had been taken. Jiho arrived at the university on time to deliver the piano before the contract was broken. Inwo couldn't believe what he was seeing. What was going on? From Jiho's mouth, he learned that his own mother had been secretly helping him. His heart died completely. Inwo called an emergency meeting and personally removed his mother from her position as the club's president, before his mother abandoned him. He wanted to abandon her first. Sora bumped into Lawyer Wu as she came down the stairs. She then realized that Lawyer Wu had teamed up with her son. Lawyer Wu was not someone to be trifled with. What was even more surprising was that he already knew Jiho's background from Inwu. Meanwhile, President Kim also heard the truth from MS Luo that happened more than 20 years ago. The person who set the fire to burn him alive was not Sora but President Yu. Because Sora had already returned to her country at that time, President Kim was shocked, but it was now impossible to stop. He had already made the witness change his testimony and recovered all the loan funds. The future group was thus completely bankrupt. Jiho then went to Inwu's office. He had already acquired the future group, and from now on he is the new owner of this company. But on Jiho's first day in office, an unexpected guest came to the office. Lawyer Wu was unwilling to let go of the company he had poured his life's work into. He argued with Jiho for compensation but was kicked out by a few security guards. Soon Lawyer Wu began his plan of action. After work, Jiho was even handkerchief knocked out in the car. They drove away with Jiho, and immediately called Sora to come with the money. Lawyer Wu knew that Sora would never sit idly by when Jiho was arrested, so Sora hurriedly told President Kim the news and asked him to prepare the cash. Then he went to the destination alone. When Sora arrived, Lawyer Wu had already been waiting for a long time. Lawyer Wu didn't waste any time and demanded 10 billion won. Sora, however, made a counteroffer. "You can let me see Jiho first, no matter how much it costs." Soon Jiho was carried out. Sora was also very worried about Jiho's safety. Seeing Sora's uneasiness, Lawyer Wu simply pushed her to the ground. Watching this, Jiho could no longer bear it and directly pushed away the men next to him. After a fight, Jiho suddenly jumped from the side and rushed to his mother's side. He wanted his mother to hurry and run away, but Sora said that she could not leave you alone. Just then, the men came after them again. Sora has never done anything for her son in her life, but this time she used her body to block a fatal blow for Jiho. Watching his dying mother in his arms, Jiho completely broke down. Finally, President Kim arrived with his men, but Lawyer Wu still ran away. Soon, Sora was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Inwo and MS Luo also hurried to the hospital. He grabbed Jiho by the collar. "If anything happens to my mother, I will never let you go." Fortunately, Sora's life was not in danger. When she woke up again, Inwo was by her side. But the first thing Sora asked when she woke up was whether Jiho was hurt. Inwo asked in despair, "Is Jiho more important than your life? What did he do to us? Have you forgotten, Mom?" Hearing Inwo yelling, MS Luo drove him out. She also told Sora that Jiho was fine. Thinking that Jiho was going to come over soon, Sora started to adjust her appearance in the mirror. But after the examination, she was told by the doctor that she had suffered a serious concussion due to a blunt object injury to the head, and she would gradually lose her vision soon. What made her even more desperate was that there was no way to cure this condition through surgery. Sora returned to the door of the ward in a daze. She hid her illness from MS Luo in order not to sadden the children. She pretended to be heartless and planned to break Jiho's hope for her. Jiho questioned her why she came to save her. Sora said it was to show off in front of President Kim, so that he could forgive her and return the company to her. Jiho thought that Sora still had a trace of humanity, but she realized that she had been deluding herself. "I was crazy to think that you were a mother." Jiho slammed the door in anger, but she didn't know how much pain Sora's heart was feeling. Sora in the hospital room wailed and cried. The next day, Jiho notified the court. They went to Sora's house and seized all her belongings. When the two returned home, MS Luo lied and said that she had disposed of all the furniture and replaced it with new ones. But soon, Sora noticed that her vision was beginning to blur. She wanted to take her medicine, but the bottle fell to the ground. There were pills all over the floor, but she couldn't see them clearly and couldn't pick them up. Sora simply couldn't accept the fact that she couldn't see. Just then, she heard a noise outside the door. Jiho had brought the auction confirmation letter. From now on, he will be the owner of this house. He told Sora to vacate the house by the end of the month. The verdict for Hayami's brother's case will be announced soon. Sora and Inwo will be sentenced to at least 1 year in prison. Inwo said, "Why was my mom abandoned even though she saved Jiho's life?" The next day, he sold his car and bought his mom and grandma expensive clothes and bags at the mall. Even if he dies, he can't live in poverty. Who knew that Sora would be furious when she saw all these things? Inwoo never thought that his mother, who had always doted on him, would actually raise her hand to him. But Sora just wanted Inwoo to understand as soon as possible. She couldn't be by her son's side forever to help him. Inwoo didn't know what had happened to his mother and couldn't understand her heart. He just felt that his mother didn't love him anymore. With tears in his eyes, he rushed out. At that moment, Sora also collapsed to the ground. That day, Sora specially prepared a table full of good food and invited Jiho to come to her house for dinner. As soon as the two brothers met, they were very unfriendly. This was not destined to be a peaceful lunch. At the table, Inwoo began to mock Jiho and said that he was an unwanted child. Jiho could not help but lose his temper and swing a fist. The meal ended like this, but as soon as Jiho left, Ms. Luo came out carrying a gift. Today was the day Sora gave birth to Jiho. She scolded Jiho for being inconsiderate. Your mother found all kinds of excuses to ask you to come over, but she actually wanted to give you a birthday. She not only prepared seaweed soup, but also bought a present. Can't you understand your mother's heart? Ms. Luo slammed the present on the ground and was very disappointed with Jiho. When Ms. Luo returned home, she found Sora fumbling on the floor to pick up the plates. As she slowly approached Sora, she felt indescribable emotions. Ms. Luo followed Sora upstairs and found her in a state of collapse because she couldn't tear off the window stickers. When Ms. Luo came in, Sora pretended to be fine and said that she was perfectly normal. She knew that her illness could not be cured, and she just hoped that her mother could help her keep the secret. Ms. Luo then understood why Sora had said such cruel things to Jiho. It turned out that Sora just didn't want to be a burden on him. Early the next morning, Ms. Luo sat by Inwoo's bed, unable to bear it any longer. She told him about Sora's illness. If you ever make your mother cry again, I won't let you off the hook. Ms. Luo took Inwoo downstairs and watched as his mother fumbled around. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Inwoo would never have believed it. His tears flowed immediately. His mother had been such a strong presence. Ms. Luo told Inwoo not to show it in front of his mother, or she would be even more saddened. Meanwhile, Jiho had also put on the blue shirt that Sora had prepared for him. Because of Ms. Luo's words, he began to try to understand Sora's heart, and then Jiho went to Sora's house. But Sora immediately questioned Inwoo. Where did you go in the morning? When she learned it was Jiho, she panicked and hurriedly ran outside. Jiho also instantly realized the problem and returned to the car in a daze. At this moment, he finally understood why his mother treated him that way. Jiho cried alone. Why is fate so unfair to me? Jiho rushed to President Kim's office and asked where Lawyer Wu was. He couldn't take it anymore. At that moment, Lawyer Wu had already gone to the airport with the money President Kim gave him. Seeing Jiho, Lawyer Wu immediately ran away like he had seen a ghost. But he was still surrounded by the men Jiho brought with him. Jiho angrily swung up his fist and blinded his own mother. He would never let go of this scumbag Lawyer Wu. Jiho grabbed him by the collar and pushed him against the railing. When Inwoo arrived and stopped Jiho, if you become a sinner now, what will happen to your mother? Do you want to live in pain like me for the rest of your life? Tears flowed uncontrollably down Jiho's face. After a mental struggle, he could only let go of his hand. Soon, they were taken to the police station. Lawyer Wu knew there was no escape for him. He handed over the evidence that could prove the loan company's illegal fundraising to the police. The next day, the head of the procuratorate came to Jiho's office. Jiho went to the police station for investigation. He had no knowledge of the group's financial problems, but he also did not name President Kim. Soon, Sora and Inwoo also came to the police station as victims to record statements. When the police asked them if they had been coerced when signing the loan contract, Sora and Inwoo both denied it, even though it was the last chance to save Mirai Group. After returning home, Jiho finally decided to let go of his resentment. He even chose to move back home. He wanted to let his mother remember his face while she was still able to see. Sora didn't want Jiho to see her pitiful appearance, even though she kept urging Jiho to leave. Jiho didn't waver in his decision. Seeing Jiho's stubborn attitude, Sora said she would move out, but as soon as she turned around, she fell from the stairs because she couldn't see. Jiho carried Sora directly to the hospital. After arriving at the hospital and bandaging the wound, Jiho had also made an appointment for Sora with an ophthalmologist. Even if there was only a 1% chance of hope, they should try their best. Sora deliberately said that she didn't want to be a burden to Jiho. She hoped that Jiho could stay away from her and forget everything. But Jiho has already made up his mind. He will definitely try every means to make his mother see his face again. He has lifted the seizure on the house and also unfrozen Sora's family bank card. That day, Ms. Luo bought a lot of nutritious food with the card Jiho gave her and gave it to Sora. But after learning that it was Jiho's money, she looked very unhappy. Sora knows exactly how Jiho has felt over the past 15 years. How can she let Jiho forgive her? All of their conversations were heard by Inwoo at the door. Inwoo also had indescribable feelings in his heart. He finally understood his mother's pain and decided to accept Jiho. The next day, Inwoo went out to find a job to support his family. However, no company was willing to hire him because of his scandalous past. Inwoo was greatly shocked. Finally, he saw a restaurant hiring part-time piano players by the roadside. Inwoo thus started his first part-time job, but the restaurant customers all pointed at him behind his back. Inwoo thought about his mother and couldn't help but shed tears. He had to start behaving himself in order to take better care of his mother. At this time, Jiho arrived at Hayami's house. He wanted to do one last thing for his mother. Jiho hoped that Hayami's family would accept reconciliation. He even knelt on the ground and begged piteously. His mother's eyes were gradually going blind. He couldn't just sit back and do nothing, although he was very sorry for Hayami's family. But he still gathered his courage and hoped to be forgiven for his mother. But even Sora's insomnia could not make up for Hayami's mother's pain. They did not agree, but drove away Jiho, who was covering up for his mother. But Jiho's heartache was all Hayami could see. She chased after him to comfort him, but Jiho never looked back. Jiho no longer had the confidence to face Hayami again. Seeing Jiho's departing back, Hayami's heart ached. She knew that this time the two of them were completely over. After returning home, Hayami knelt before her mother and brother, hoping that they would agree to Jiho's request. She even said that she would never see Jiho again. This was her last wish. That day, Ms. Luo took Sora to the supermarket. However, she didn't notice Sora for a moment, and Sora was knocked to the ground because she couldn't see the passers-by. Ms. Luo quickly ran over and helped Sora up. However, the passerby didn't say a word of apology and walked on as if nothing had happened. Ms. Luo lost her temper and rushed forward to start a fight. After a fight, Sora didn't say a word to Ms. Luo. Ms. Luo asked Sora if she felt ashamed. She found tears welling up in Sora's eyes. And this was the first time Sora felt that the woman in front of her was like her mother. After leaving the supermarket, the two sat down on a bench in the park to talk. Sora's childhood was not easy, because she was the eldest daughter in the family. She had taken on the important responsibility of taking care of her younger brothers and sisters since she was young. Ms. Luo apologizes to Sora for not being a good mother to her. "You are so persistent with your children because I didn't love you properly." After returning home, Sora's mind is constantly filled with the image of being in the middle of the road during the day. She also becomes more and more afraid. Sora rushes to Jiho's room and tenderly strokes her son's face. She can no longer hold back her tears. Afraid of waking Jiho, she immediately runs out of the room. But what she doesn't know is that Jiho is not asleep. After his mother left, he rolled over and sobbed alone. Soon, Inwoo also had a very good opportunity. A well-known composer even expressed a desire to sign with him to collaborate on a classical music album. Inwoo originally felt that he was not qualified enough because of his scandalous reputation. However, he learned that Jiho had helped write a clarification of plagiarism to prove that his plagiarism incident was already being reviewed. Inwoo was very moved, so he gave Jiho his first salary earned from part-time work. Although it was trivial, he would gradually repay his brother with his abilities. However, one day Inwoo accidentally discovered that the songwriter who wanted to collaborate with him was actually in contact with Jiho. He then realized that it was Jiho who had helped him behind the scenes. For a moment, his strong pride made Inwoo once again misunderstand Jiho's good intentions. He didn't need Jiho's pity or this kind of charity, but Jiho was only doing this for his mother. "Mom is the one who wants to see you continue to make music the most." Jiho's words completely awakened Inwoo, and he picked himself up again, while watching his son Sora, who continued to pursue his dream of music, also revealed a look of relief and happiness. This day was the day Sora and Inwoo were to be tried in court. Sora was sentenced to 8 months. Inwoo was sentenced to 1 year. However, due to Hayami's mother's letter of reconciliation, Sora also managed to get a 2-year reprieve. This finally ended the feud between the two families. The sentence was terrible, but the punishment from heaven was even worse. Inwoo was sent to prison. When she returned home, Sora cooked a big dinner, ironed all of Jiho's shirts, and cleaned the whole house. When Jiho came home, Sora disappeared. There was not a trace of her in the big house. Looking at the neatly folded clothes on the table, Jiho broke down. At this time, Sora was already on the bus leaving Seoul. Leaving was the best choice for her. Secretary Wu apologized to Sora for taking the baby away 20 years ago. If she wanted to take revenge on herself, why didn't she go further? She was actually fooling herself like an idiot. She really cared about her husband. Time passed like this for a year. Jiho also personally came to the prison gate to pick up his younger brother. After learning that his mother had disappeared for a year, Inwoo simply couldn't control his emotions. But in fact, Jiho had never given up looking for her mother for so long, but they had searched everywhere and had no news of her. Meanwhile, Sora was living alone on the island where Jiho had spent his childhood. She was completely blind. Every day, she had to rely on the voice of her mobile phone to tell her the date of Inwoo's release from prison. She took out a photo of herself with her 2 sons. Finally, one day, Hayami's mother learned from President Kim that Sora had disappeared. She took the initiative to ask Jiho out and, as a mother herself, gave him a hint. Think about where your mother's heart is most broken. Perhaps she is living there with a sense of penance. After returning home, Jiho kept thinking about these words and asked Ms. Luo what made his mother feel pain and guilt. That day, the sons still traveled a long way to find their mother. Seeing their mother with blank eyes, mopping the floor alone, Their tears could no longer hold back. Inwo rushed forward and took his mother's hand. "Why do you have to live such a down and out life here? Is it because I'm useless and you don't want to see me?" Sara didn't know how to answer Inwoo. She pretended that she was doing well and didn't need anyone to worry about her. But her hands were full of frostbite and bruises. Inwoo's heart ached so much that he wanted to take his mother home, but Sora refused him flatly. She couldn't go back to that home even if she were to end up alone on this island. She didn't have the confidence to go back to that home. Sara prayed that Inwoo could pretend not to know and make himself feel better. Inwoo doesn't understand why his mother is dragging her children down. Sara says she doesn't want Jiho to feel sad because of her. The three of them cry their hearts out, but after they've cried, Sara dries her own tears. Time passes slowly. "And you will forget me, let your mother live here. Missing you." Seeing her in such pain, the two of them have no choice but to set off back home in tears. When they got home, Ms. Luo was very angry to learn that they had not brought Sora back. "Can't you two sons win over a mother?" Ms. Luo packed her clothes and planned to let Inwoo drive her there. But Inwoo said, "If we go looking for her again, what if she hides again? Right now, we're lucky to know where she is." Just then, Jiho came downstairs and rushed out. He still couldn't let go. Sora, who was on the other side of the house, was boiling water on the stove, but she suddenly ran back to the bedroom and started packing her bags. Maybe she was afraid that the children would come looking for her again, or maybe she was just missing them. But after a few minutes, she smelled something burning in the room. By the time Sora rushed out, the whole kitchen was already on fire. She started groping in the dark, first taking off her jacket and trying to put out the fire. Then she grabbed a wash basin and started pouring water in an unknown direction. But all these things seemed useless for a blind person like her. Eventually, Sara gave up struggling and leaned against the wall. When she woke up again, she was lying in her room, and the person sitting beside her who saved her was Jiho. Fortunately, Jiho arrived in time, so Sara wasn't hurt. He reassured his mother and said that he would not force her to go back. "As long as you are somewhere I can find you, I will be very relieved." That night, Jiho stayed the night by his mother's side. Looking at Sora's back, Jiho felt happier than ever. If only he could always be by his mother's side. The next day, Jiho received the news that his grandmother had passed away. He took Sora with him to the nursing home where his grandmother was staying. The nursing staff scolded Sora for not showing up all these years. Sora felt heartbroken. She felt the residual warmth of her grandmother in the bed with her hands. She sincerely apologized to her grandmother. Over the years, she had not fulfilled her duty as a daughter-in-law. Her grandmother had passed away without a single reproach. If she could do it all over again, she would sincerely treat everyone around her. When Sora came out with her white cane, Ms. Luo stopped her. In the year since Sora disappeared, Ms. Luo had not stopped worrying about her daughter's safety. Ms. Luo hoped that Sora would let her stay by her side. She didn't ask to be Sora's mother or family. "Just think of me as a nanny at work, always by your side." Ms. Luo embraced her daughter in pain. Before they left, Jiho told his mother that he was going to study abroad. He may not be able to come back for a long time. Jiho told his mother not to wait for him. Sora's eyes filled with tears instantly. Jiho raised his hand to touch his mother's cheek, but hesitated. Sora hurried Jiho to leave. "Don't be late for the boarding time." Jiho also held back his tears and said goodbye to his mother. But as soon as Jiho left, Sora felt an unbearable heartache. At this moment, she felt abandoned by the whole world. Sora began to stagger after Jiho's car. Because she couldn't see it, she fell several times on the road, but that didn't stop her from moving forward, and she chased after it all the way to the edge of the cliff. Mumbling Jiho's name, Sora wailed and cried, fell and kept getting up. Her heart was full of remorse for Jiho and she regretted not saying sorry to him until now. Soon Ms. Luo came to the island with delicious food to find Sora, but Sora was not there and the fruit had just been cut, so she immediately ran out to look for Sora, and finally she picked up Sora's shoes along the road. Ms. Luo couldn't believe it. Could something have happened to Sora? At this time, Jiho had already arrived at the airport. The person who saw him off was his father, President Kim, and Hyami was standing not far away. Although it was impossible for the two of them to be together again, but their feelings for each other have never changed. Being able to have these beautiful memories is the happiest thing for them. On the other side, Sora was also rushed to the hospital for rescue, but she couldn't hold on for long. Sora hoped that her mother could help keep the cure a secret. As a mother, she didn't want to block her child's future. Now she had to go to Inwa's father to beg for forgiveness. Ms. Luo held back her heartache and finally dialed Jiho's phone. But she didn't tell Jiho about this. Instead, she lied and said that Sora had gone out for a walk. She put the phone up to Sora's ear. When the call ended, Sora had no regrets. She slowly closed her eyes and passed away forever. Time passed like this for 3 years. Inwo and Jiho also had a long-lost concert together. During these 3 years, Jiho didn't know that his mother had passed away. He happily said that every month, his mother would send him a CD, and today he is going to play one of the songs. The two sat down at the piano and started playing. They started and ended with the piano. Fortunately, after all that has happened, they are still the best of brothers. Okay, that's the end of today's story. Thank you all for your support and company. See you next time.